the second of a series of lunch and learn sessions RAP is hosting over the coming months. My name is Hugh Jones and I'm a specialist in food waste prevention in the food system transformation team, and I am joined by fellow team member Emma. I'll provide a brief introduction to RAP, the Food Waste Reduction Roadmap, and provide advance notice of further sessions. I will then pass you on for the main event to James and Carl to present on Billington Group's work on harnessing the power of data. Please feel free to use the Q&A function in Teams to raise any questions you may have, as we plan to leave time at the end of the session to address any queries. The session will officially finish at 12:30, but please feel free to stay on the webinar if you have further questions for James and Carl. For those of you not aware, RAP is a global environmental action charity transforming our broken product and food systems to create circular living for the benefit of climate, nature and people. For 25 years, RAP has delivered programs that reduce carbon dioxide and waste, restore nature and change people's behaviour. Our mission is to embed circular living in every boardroom and every home. Our focus for the food system is simple but powerful: cutting food waste, greenhouse gas emissions, and managing water sustainably. If you can find a quiet corner during the season's festivities, then why not dip into RAP's Circular Living podcasts? From the Sunday roast to your everyday porridge, over 1 billion tonnes of food goes to waste every year. But we're wasting more than what ends up in the bin. We're losing culture, community, and our future. Hear stories from around the world of people fighting to protect what matters most through the Food Pact network. The Don't Waste this series of podcasts explains what is at stake if we don't fix the broken systems we all rely on, starting with food. So how can we fix the broken food system? Well, we can all play our part by taking action on food waste. RAP's Food Waste Reduction Roadmap adopts the Target, Measure, Act approach to tackling food waste. It asks businesses to set a food waste reduction target for your UK operations, measure in a consistent way and share what you've learned. We'll hear from James and Carl the importance of measurement and how data does the talking. Using the data to prove the business case to take action to reduce food waste within your own operations, your supply chain and consumer. The roadmap is free to sign up to, and RAP provides practical steps to getting started through toolkits, resources and guidance, all freely available on our website. If not already signed up to the roadmap, commit and act now and start to reduce costs within your business. If you are signed up, then encourage your suppliers and customers to commit to the roadmap to help tackle inefficiencies within your supply chain. If you would like further information, please visit the webpage or contact the Food System Transformation team via Food Waste Roadmap at RAP NGO. Purpose of these sessions is to share learning, encourage discussion, support continuous improvement, and more importantly, stimulate action. These are the working titles. Please feel free to suggest topics and put yourselves forward to share examples of best practice. Sodexo have today confirmed that they will be delivering session 03, so we look forward to that. We will also be very grateful for your feedback on these sessions. I'm now delighted to hand you over to James and Carl on how they've let the data do the talking. This is apparently a quote from an ops director that Carl used to work with. Let the data do the talking and convert everything into pound notes. Sage advice indeed. Over to you, gents.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to share our work. So I'm just going to hand over briefly to James now and let him introduce himself.
Hi everyone, I'm James. I'm the Group Sustainability Reporting Coordinator, data analytics, data collation and all that fun stuff.
And I'm Carl, and I work for English Provender Company as the ESG business lead. It's my job to use the group ESG program and drive sustainability actions at our two sites. Some quick details about our business. We are one of the largest family-owned businesses in the UK. Our heritage is in trading and sugar. Our head office is in the Cunard buildings in Liverpool, and we have interests in both agriculture and animal feed and food manufacturing, and so find ourselves being involved in the food supply chain, from working with farmers right through to other food manufacturers, retailers, food service and quick service retail. With regards to food manufacturing, our sister company Billington Foods operates from Scunthorpe and Wellingborough, and EPC operates from Newbury and Newport. In 2023, the group launched our Growing for the Future programme, which brought together our ambitions for sustainability. Operating under 3 pillars, our impact, our future and our influence, the programme, which includes some key operational commitments under emissions, water and food waste. Hopefully that all sounds familiar. So these are the 3 operational commitments under our impact. Scope 1 and 2 emissions, a 55% reduction by 2033. Water, 30% reduction of non-ingredient water by 2030. And food waste, to join WRAP and commit to a 50% reduction by 2030. In early 2024, we met with WRAP and duly joined and completed our commitment to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. These slides tell the story that James and I have been on to first discover where we were and then how to go about and start to make a difference. To quote WRAP, we had a target, we had some ideas how to measure things, but importantly, we quickly realised we needed to act to make a difference.
So, setting the scene. So you can't know where you're going until you know where you are. And that quote from Bill Burnett there really sums up the start of our journey. When we began looking at food waste, the first question wasn't, how do we fix it? It was, where are we now? And then that opened up a whole series of questions. Who actually knows what? Is the data accurate? Is it complete? And crucially, can we use it in a format that makes sense? And for some personal context, this was my first ESG role. And when I joined 18 months ago, these questions seemed very daunting, very much like a jigsaw puzzle, but I'm missing the top of the box. In any case, this was the foundation, and before we could make any changes, we had to understand the landscape. Next slide, please. So, the data landscape. When we started digging, we realized something, that there's no single source of truth. Instead, we had data scattered across the entire business, warehouse systems, factory logs, commercial reports, finance records, engineering logs, site services, technical data, procurement data, quality checks, and then, of course, external sources. Each piece told a part of the story, but none seemingly married up right, giving us parts of the full picture. And to make it more interesting, these sources came in different formats. Some neat rows, neat columns with labels and such, others absolutely not that, different levels of detail, some in weeks, some in months, different definitions of what waste even meant. So the challenge wasn't just collecting data, it was stitching together this jigsaw puzzle where some pieces didn't quite seem to fit. Next slide, please. So as we worked through this, something became very clear, that not all data is equal. On this slide, you'll see that some sources are highlighted in green, finance and external suppliers, and others in orange. Why those? Because if you strip a factory back to its fundamentals, it really is just stuff coming in and stuff coming out. And if you can pin down what comes in and what goes out accurately, then everything else just essentially is supplementary data. So often in this role, I found that I've asked the question of, I need X, I need Y, and I've been met with the answer of, well, you need to speak to, and then you get 10 plus different people, depending on who you ask. That was a big learning curve for us. Start with the bedrock, then build up. Build your model on top of the fundamentals. Don't try and get lost in the haze of it all. Next slide, please. So this is very much an ongoing process. This graph here, this circular graph, represents the process that we've adopted. Gather the data, clean and more importantly, standardize it, review and cross-check it, and then report and share the insights, and then repeat. This is definitely not a one-off exercise. It's very much continuous, because the moment you stop, the picture begins to blur again. And it's also certainly not one-way traffic. You'll often find yourself taking one step forward, two steps back, or three steps forward and one step back. It's very much an organic process. And as you progress through, you'll notice more and more and learn more and more. This cycle has helped us move from assumptions to evidence and from evidence to action. And the last thing I'll say on this process is that the only other thing that can benefit your journey here is to go and look at it. Data is great, but always remember to tie it back to reality. Look at what's leaving the factory, look at the waste, and use what you see to inform your understanding of the data. And where there are gaps or anomalies, just keep the cycle going. Next slide, please. So up to this point, we've talked about gathering and cleaning data and then digging into the detail. But here's where the data really comes into its own by telling the story visually. From all that raw information, we created a series of graphs to show long-term trends. Why? Because trends give context. They show whether we're moving in the right direction or if we're standing still. We've all got goals, reduce this by this much, by 2030, 2040, or whenever, but what does that actually mean? How many tons does that equate to? What does that look like? Don't underestimate the power of the visual, both for reporting, for telling a story, and for convincing others of what you've found. And these aren't just for us in sustainability, they're powerful tools for the business updates, for raising awareness and for setting objectives across the site. When people can see the data, it changes the conversation to I think this to I know this. The first graph there on the left tracks our scope 1 and 2 emissions, broken down by electricity, gas, and F-gases. The second graph looks at tons of food waste and nominal food waste, and then the food waste lost in effluent, alongside sales, because again, context matters. Both tell essentially the same story of progresses, challenges, and the gap of where we need to be. The next task was to act. The next task was to act and complete a deep dive to identify the opportunities to deliver. Next slide.
The devil's in the detail. Help! We've all got too much data. We can't see the wood for the trees. We need a simpler view of the world. That sounds familiar? At the beginning of 2025, we knew we needed to make a plan for acting on the food loss waste reduction target. We thought we knew the big picture, but we needed to understand more. We drew a very simple map or process flow. As James said earlier, we can overcomplicate things, and so we kept it simple. In a factory, raw materials and water and packaging come in, and generally, hopefully, good product goes out, along with some food waste. To get into the detail, we used a few data sources. Most useful was the total tonnage collected, as reported by the waste contractor. As they also broke this down into different formats, glass pallets, non-glass pallets, dolabs of plastic, dolabs of glass, pallecons, IBCs, etc., this gave us an opportunity to identify the possible and likely causes. We also used the tonnage from our financial waste KPI data, and we did a mass balance exercise and called the waste according to the financial KPIs as classified and the difference as unclassified. We knew that some food waste was being removed as effluent from the site DAF plant, and we spent time sampling and testing this so we could convert the effluent collections into tons of food waste as well. We were now starting to make sense of the numbers. Next, we identified 4 top-level reasons for food waste: good raw materials WIP not used, hygiene-related activities, substandard, and good products not sold. We then mapped the tonnages into these 4 reasons and marked each opportunity as low, medium, or high. And working alongside the operations team, we brainstormed ideas and drew up a series of actions for each opportunity. We looked for the biggest, easiest wins and started working on the top 3. What we learned is that money talks. Always convert the opportunity into cash. Money talks and then supports an even better business case. You may also need some investment, and this will provide the justification that you need. I want to share an example of how data can be used to identify an opportunity. Here is a warehouse using electricity for lighting. Look at the annual usage on the top left. This looks okay and probably meeting its budget. Again, look at the weekly usage. This also looks okay and probably meeting its budget. However, by having more information or breaking down the information we already have reveals what is going on each day. Our warehouse is closed on a Saturday and a Sunday, but look at the usage. Who's left the lights on? 28% of the electricity is being used at the weekends. That's a big opportunity to reduce. But then it gets even better. Looking at some half-hourly real-time data, we can see that the warehouse is using nearly as much electricity overnight as during the day. But given the warehouse only works 2 shifts, what is going on? Who's left the lights on? Leaving the lights on for 8 hours overnight is 33% of the daily usage. That's another big opportunity. Whilst I understand this is a relatively simple example, the same method can be used for gas and steam, leaving the boiler on when the site is closed at the weekend, or steam leaks and losses when there's no demand, maybe overnight. Water. Are there any unusual spikes during the day? How much water has been used when the site is closed? These are probably leaks. Food waste. Are there any unusual patterns? Do we generate more on one shift or one site compared to another? We have been busy installing and making use of smart metering around our sites. These are great, and with the use of further sub-metering, you can gain some real insights into what is really going on. Pact. Sometimes the easiest part is finding the opportunities. The hardest part is getting them delivered and making them stick. Using utility/supplier invoices would be a good way of verifying that the opportunity continues to deliver. For electricity, gas and water, you could also use your smart meter data. Supplier bills and invoices all go back to finance, so use finance to verify the reduction and financial savings. Money talks. Finance will be your best friend. But please don't forget the operations team. Identify the people who have been part of the solution. They are the ones who will make sure it sticks and stays on track. They are also the ones to help when it starts to drift. If your company has a recognition scheme, why not nominate them for doing great work and making a real difference? So you probably spent quite a lot of time with the team on delivering the opportunity. So check in, pop back and say hello, see how it's all going and let them know it's still working. 5 minutes, once a week, that's all it takes. And most importantly, celebrate success. Remember where you were when you started and what has been achieved. And here are a few examples of our successes. The first one in blue is the condensate return fixed. That's the water reduction opportunity, as well as the gas reduction, because we're now returning more hot water back to the boiler. In orange, the Mangle project, raw material recovery and removal of a food waste stream. And then in red at the bottom, the boiler economizer repair, which is the natural gas reduction and using boiler efficiency improvements. And our most recent success, working with the factory to control the use of water for cappers and washers on the filling line. That's clearly a water reduction opportunity. So finally, we're back to our longer term trend graphs where we started. By knowing the detail behind the data, we can now get some real value from these. Trend graphs will provide the hard evidence that the opportunities are delivering and helping to achieve the business commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both. So while everyone's posting your questions, just to note, we're delighted to advise that we've captured the key elements of James and Carl's work in one of a suite of updated case studies that demonstrate the business case for taking action on food waste. From savings in food waste, reduction in costs, return on investments with very short timescales, and increases in surplus food redistributed. Great examples to follow within your business or to share with your supply chain. So we'll now hand the floor over to yourselves with any questions for James and Carl. Thank you very much.
Great. So we've had a couple of questions through already. First one, which insight from your food waste data had the biggest impact on commercial thinking or day-to-day operations?
That is a good question. Carl, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's fine. I was also sort of looking at the other question, which was about surprising the data or assumptions about food waste was really occurring. The analogy that I would say is an iceberg. You know, the top half of the iceberg, and everyone's focused on that, but you know, really what's going on underneath. And I think that was the big surprise, that in our business we were focusing on a certain amount of waste, but when you looked at the tonnage that the waste contractor was collecting, this unclassified waste, that actually turned out to be the biggest opportunity, and that's where our focus has been.
I think looking at looking at that question again, I think the biggest single thing is actually look at the data that finance have, and look at the data that your waste haulier have, and share amongst whoever it's relevant to, because I think you'll find people have in their heads one image of how much food waste is actually wasted, and then there's the reality. And then you'll get the question about, can you validate this? But that's all supplementary. I think really that's the big thing, because I think you'll be surprised how little people actually look at data on a day-to-day.
Thanks, James. We've had another one through for organisations at the very start of their journey. What is the single most important first step that you would recommend?
I would say find out where you are. Obviously, clearly, you've got to know what you're going after. So is it water? Is it food waste? Is it emissions? But the very first thing is to know where you are, because if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going or how big the opportunity may be.
I would also add on to that that data centralization is quite important. You'll have several different financial departments. You'll have engineering will have their data, and so on and so forth. Drag it all together and compare it based on the principles of what we talked about previously. But yeah, drag everything together so that you don't have to ask 40 different people 40 different questions a day.
What's next for your plans, if you can share?
So in terms of food waste, we've delivered one or two of the opportunities, but we've identified quite a few. So we're sort of doing the top three principle. We focused on those, but we're now saying what are the next ones that we're also going to focus on food waste. And then with regards to water, then more sub-metering, more identifying the opportunities in the business. Once you know something, you want to know more, and therefore that's where the beauty of metering comes in, because we know something, but actually we want to know that part of something, and we don't know that part of it, so we then have to put another control in to identify what that is. But going off the top, the big stuff, that creates the biggest opportunities, where the biggest wins will be.
Let's see. Someone's asked, how did RAP help you on this progress?
I see the question is brilliant. So last year, James and I attended. We were the new kids on the block. We just signed up to RAP. We were trying to make head or tail of what all this stuff was about. And I remember sitting on the table and we were talking about food waste. And I was like, oh, we need to draw a map. You need to lay it out on a piece of paper. And that's where my picture of the food factory came from, because if you put it down into a basic flow, then it's much simpler. So I have to say, RAP was a massive inspiration for me, and that was a bit of a eureka moment when we sat there and worked that out. And the other thing is, from our ESG point of view, we have got this commitment to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. We're a signatory to RAP, so at the end of the day, that is really important to us. We've got this commitment in place, and we want to achieve it, and we look forward to the journey that we're going on over the next few years to get there.
What would you do differently if you're starting again today?
I think we might both have very different answers here. For me, sort of going back to what I mentioned earlier, in that when you go around a factory or wherever it might be, and you have in your mind a question of, I'm looking for X or Y, and then someone will say, oh, you need to speak to this such and such, or this is the data you need. I would say, if I was doing it again, I would have maybe less trust in people is the wrong way of describing, but I would have more skepticism, and I would base my thinking more on the principles of, I need to first establish everything coming in and everything going out, and then work into the detail, rather than try and dive into the detail straight away. So I think if you just go from one department to the next asking that question, you'll ultimately miss things, because again, what waste means varies across a factory. So yeah, start with basic principles, I would say.
Oh.
What would you do differently, Carl?
Yeah, I've been trying to think of a good answer, but the devil's in the detail, and you need to go and find out what's really going on. You think you know what's going on, but yeah. And even when you think you know, then you discover more and you learn more. So yeah, I've discovered lots about waste and water and food in water. That's been a massive journey of discovery. So every day I go and visit the DAF plant and find out what's going on.
I think we've got time for one more question. How has focusing on food waste and going through this process influenced the wider sustainability strategy? And also, I'd like to add in there, how has that helped with the business case and selling, doing more of this within the business?
So it's a really good question, and one of the things that James and I have done is we've tried to work out where we are in real time. So we've just done our financial year, finished at the end of August, and we've just got our numbers for our emissions and all the other things that we've done during the last financial year. But by having good sets of data means that you can drive things into real time. So we don't want to know what our annual emissions have been. James and I want to know what's been our weekly emissions, what's been our monthly emissions, what's been our quarterly emissions, because it's all too late when you get to the end of the year and you look back. So using that whole idea of knowing where you are, driving out some data, has we can use that effectively across all parts of our sustainability strategy. And now we're thinking about scope 3, so we can all calculate our purchase goods and services emissions by multiplying the quantities by the emission factors. But we don't want to wait until the end of the year to do that. We want to do that in real time. So that's our sort of next ambition, to do that.
Great, thank you. Back over to Hugh then.
Okay, a final question from me, if I may, Emma. With the Mangle project, you knew there was an issue historically. What was the tipping point to actually say, right, well, let's put some time aside to actually tackle this issue? What provided the time and the budget to enable you to do that?
So by understanding the size of the opportunity, that was on our radar, and then someone within our business came up with a solution. So then we took that solution, spoke to the supplier, purchased the equipment, and then prior to that, we calculated the opportunity. So we knew that we had some investment to buy the mangles, but we worked out how quickly that investment would pay back, and then that really ran the project really quickly.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you both for an excellent presentation, and to those of you on the webinar for joining. Please contact RAP if you would like further information on how you can play your part. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll hopefully see you all again on 14th of January for our next session on how to engage your staff and get them to take ownership to help you achieve your food waste reduction target. And please feel free to stay on the webinar if you have any further questions. Thank you ever so much. Have a great day and a great Christmas.